Greetings, this is Griff Ruby, the Nostalgic Catholic, with yet another Isaac Asimov review. And Asimov's name is on the cover, but the artwork and so forth pertains to another story, Virgin Planet. So, at any rate, once again, he is featured in the table of contents, Dust of Death by Isaac Asimov. So, it's a mystery story. I might add, it's also one somewhat atypical for this particular issue of Venture, well, or any issue of Venture. Most of the stories here do kind of feature, some of it interesting annotation. 11/16/56. This is the January 1957 issue of Venture, but it actually must have hit the newsstands 11/16/56. And this one was presumably bought on that day. That's why somebody would bother to write the date. So, but this one kind of tends to feature stories that are usually a little bit risque. Okay, whatever. But his story on here in particular is that it's just a straight cool mystery. The Dust of Death. Now, the Dust of Death is in some ways a kind of a dry run for part of his A Whiff of Death or The Death Dealers, give or take which title you want to go by, or even Sit with Death, which was his working title before it ever got in print anywhere. In which, the first part, the murder is committed in a totally different way. But towards the end, the detective, I think, once again has done something to cause the murderer to be all spooked. In this one, you got this guy named Llewes who is being very, he's a very important guy, right? Except a lot of his importance is based on the work of his graduate students who do all this great stuff, and then he somehow manages to accumulate all the credit to himself. And you want to work under the guy, you do all this great stuff, and he gets the credit, and you just did the work, and that's all. And the only good thing out of it all is that assuming you play along with us forever the heck long, you have to, then he will give you a good review, a good recommendation, and that recommendation will actually carry you very, very far. It's later pointed out that he also seems to have a knack for swinging such things as government grants and access to extraordinary resources such as lunar trips or what have you. So, working with him is unpleasant, but apparently, it could, if you're willing to put up with the unpleasantness, have very real advantages. However, one guy named Farley, one of these students, the other graduate students, working with him or under him, were very to carry out their little personal frustrations. They always talk about how to murder him. And Farley is just another one who gets in those same conversations, only with him, he starts thinking, maybe I really should. So, he spent 6 months on Titan, on a planet, trudging along through methane snows, which I don't know if they actually have those there. Methane, I think we do have that. But anyway, methane snow. I wonder if they have free hydrogen there. It seems kind of hard to conceive, but you never know. But anyway, that the free hydrogen will be relevant later. I'm not sure how it goes with methane. For 6 months with just barely some little bubble of oxygen to live in or whatever, or maybe a spacesuit all the rest of the time. So it's been, a big ordeal. And then whatever he was discovering out there, he said that Titan has a reducing atmosphere. This is a bit of chemistry, technical language, reducing. They're going to be talking about reducing agent. I'll leave it at that. Chemists will say, yeah, well, I know what he's talking about. And then everybody else, it doesn't matter. But, okay. So, he's working under Llewes, and he wants to kill him, seriously. And he decides to use a little bit of platinum black and toluene. And I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it Toulene, toluene, whatever. But at any rate, I've seen it in print, but I don't know how it's pronounced. So some of that stuff gets scattered around on the floor and the bottle's left open. So it's kind of vaporizing into the air. And then there's a very serious use of platinum black. What does he do? He puts this little black powder inside the nozzle of, well, now, this is where stuff gets a little tricky. He just spent 6 months in a methane and presumably hydrogen atmosphere on Titan. And in that atmosphere, if you wanted to cause a fire, you would put it on, and you had different cylinders. It's kind of interesting. These gas cylinders have different colors for different chemicals. So, like nitrogen is brown, and oxygen is green, and methane is a stripe of white and red, and hydrogen is just plain red, and just normal atmospheric air is yellow, and I mean all these different colors, and it's like this color scheme, I guess. I'm kind of curious whether that's real, and if so, what the colors would be for the various noble gases, but that's neither here nor there. So he goes and so he's used to working with that. Now, if he's on Titan and he wanted to do this sort of thing, he would put the platinum black on the hydrogen cylinder. Next time you turn it on, the hydrogen comes past the platinum black and react. He would put it on the oxygen cylinder because the oxygen would go past the platinum black and react with the hydrogen, or maybe even also the methane. This is where my chemistry is a little weak here. And burst into flame immediately, just right on contact. That platinum black is pretty serious stuff. I think that's what they use in a thermite bomb, and I remember seeing one demonstrated in my chemistry class. It was pretty vivid. So it's one of those things they sometimes do in chemistry class to make it feel like, and be careful. There's stuff you can do here that looks innocent but will blow you up. And they're not kidding. So some people think that makes chemistry fun. Other people just say, I'll find something safer. Yeah. Forget rock climbing. Give me something safe like hang gliding. Okay, but that's its own story. I'm not going to go into it. But so anyway, then he suddenly realizes, wait, I'm on Earth, and he put it on the wrong cylinder. He put it on the oxygen cylinder so that it would react with the hydrogen in the atmosphere. And then he realizes in his attempt to murder, he did the wrong one. So he's going to go back and put it on the hydrogen cylinder. So now it will react with the oxygen in the atmosphere here on Earth. Okay. So he does the thing. There's an explosion. Llewes is dead. And the mistake, first of all, shows somebody did put platinum black on these things. And second of all, which proves murder. And second of all, who would put the stuff on an oxygen cylinder unless they were somebody who spent so much time in a hydrogen methane atmosphere that it's like in that such they did that. Farley, it's you, Farley, and that's the story. I don't know. I gave away a little too much, but the chemistry of it is quite sound. And then you get to the end of the Whiff of Death story, and something kind of similar is done with one of the gas canisters that for some reason gets the guilty party to freak out and get all, don't do that! But we were just joking. There wasn't anything there. Whatever it was, I don't know. It's been a while and I don't remember whether it involved platinum black, but there was some chemistry, some chemical, and apparently there was reason to think that the murderer is going to murder again by a technique kind of similar to this one. So there's kind of a connection there between the two stories. So that's the characterization. Obviously, attempting murder never does very much good. And apparently, given all the good stuff that Llewes does for everybody else, despite his taking their credit, which, yeah, everybody hates that, but I don't know. I guess, once again, this is kind of the big egos of the Asimov fiction canon. People have these big egos. They're willing to do all this great stuff, but they've got to get the credit. And, oh well. Never mind screwing over all the public or anybody who could have used any discovery they made. If they don't get the credit, nobody gets it. I find that kind of hard to reconcile with. So, now that story appears finally in Asimov's Mysteries. As far as I could tell, I did not detect any textual change, with the sole very, very minor exception. Let's see here. Dust of Death, page 83. We already showed the page. I didn't say the page number, but it's on 83. There's no blurb. There's a blurb on the contents page, but there is a blurb on here. No artwork. Dust of Death. Farley had not spent half a year alone on Titan with only robots. Would you call this a robot story because of that? The robots don't really feature in. But if multivac were mentioned even that incidentally, I would have to call it a multivac story. Yeah, well, whatever. Anyway, he was with only robots to talk to, just to see another man take credit. He'd fight for his rights. He'd even murder. Okay. And then it says part 1. And so part 1, build up to the crime itself. Part 2, we get the beginning of the detective trying to figure stuff out. This was one kind of interesting thing was he writes about this story that he had originally intended as he wrote this story. Let's see, guys. Find the actual thing in here. Dying Night 57. 57. It says here. No, that's not the one. Dust of Death 101. That makes more sense. And he says, originally, he writes, I had planned to make this another Wendell Urth story. But a new magazine was about to be published, and I wanted to be represented in it with something that was not too clearly a holdover from another magazine. I adjusted matters accordingly. I'm a little sorry now, and I played with the thought of rewriting the story for this volume and restoring Dr. Urth, but inertia rose triumphant overall. So this is kind of the woulda, coulda, shoulda been a Wendell Urth story. I guess we could consider it an honorary Wendell Urth story. I think I will also register it, though in fact this is not. For one thing, the investigator goes on site. That is something Wendell Urth would never do unless the place of this disaster were, so much times walking distance from Wendell Urth's apartment. I'm sure that would have been an easy enough difference to make if he decided to do that. But he opted against Wendell Urth, and so it is not a Wendell Urth. It instead appears in Venture, which, as I said, seems to be focused mostly on kind of risque situations. But this one was not. It's just a straight murder mystery, so it's kind of unusual that way. Anyway, that's what I have for that. Thanks for listening.